Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the ROKER RAPPORT podcast in association with the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. It's Gav back this week for the review show as we talk about Sunderland versus Burnley. Sorry to remind you all of it, but yeah, we've got something to talk about and it wasn't a nice win as me and Chris had hoped for, maybe reluctantly, on Thursday. It was a rousing defeat, a terrible second half by Sunderland in a game where in the first half, we looked like we were going to walk away with it. And in the second half, we saw just why Burnley are such a good side. Joining me today is Phil West, first of all. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Gav.
And also with me is Chris. Hello, mate.
You're right, Gav. And just for the record, I went for a draw. You went.
I said you were hoping for a win. We're always hoping for a win.
We're all hoping for a win, but
yeah.
I went for a draw, just for the record.
Well, I would have took a draw when we were 3-2 down. By that point, the game was gone. I'm a little calmer today than I probably was at full time when I just wanted to avoid everything. I mean, I opened Twitter and Facebook and I just closed it straight away. I was like, oh my God, it's unbelievable, the reaction. And I can understand it to a degree because we haven't seen a collapse like that from Sunderland in a long time. Like that, especially at home, that's the first time where I've looked around and I've seen like a mass exodus of fans when the goal goes in. I haven't seen that for a long, long time. But, you know, it wasn't great in that second half, was it, Chris? I mean, let's just quickly round up your thoughts and feelings on the performance as a whole. It was poor second half, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, I'm going to say it. It's a game of two halves, isn't it? Someone's got to say it, and it was. But I mean, that whole. I mean, you talked about the reaction. I mean, everyone was just, you know, completely and utterly pissed off. You know, if we'd played well, and if we'd had a decent performance, 90 minutes, and got beat 2-0, people might have just been, oh well, you know, it was one of them. Played a good team. I think, and actually, the talk before the game was we're playing a good team. And, you know, if we don't get something out of it, you know, so be it. Let's kind of go for it. And we talked on the preview, actually. I mean, I think you actually described it, Gav, as a free hit. Like you actually said it's a bit of a free hit because Burnley
Yeah, I did. Mm-hmm.
Good team. So, I mean, we had that kind of mentality beforehand, but going 2-0 up and then Frankie and Danny kind of going in half-time talking about man of the match and all that sort of stuff already and all this, you kind of, I mean, I wasn't in the stadium, but you might be able to talk more about it, Gav and Phil, about it, that it seemed like the opening exchanges of the second half, the fans almost thought, well, it's 3 points in the bag. You know, people were kind of extended their kind of pint at half-time and maybe had an extra one and just thought, oh, this is brilliant, we've got 3 points. It seemed a bit flat and quiet in the stands, even when we were 2-0 up, that we thought we'd won it. And when it gets to that, and then you kind of lose it and give it away, it just makes everyone kind of pissed off. But yeah, I mean, we'll get into it, but the difference between the first half and second half, it was night and day, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I was stood at half-time with my mates down on the concourse watching the highlights, and I actually said, I can't believe how bad Burnley have been. They were terrible first half. Like, I just didn't see it coming, what came in the second half. And I guess, you know, that's probably the case with the team as well. I mean, we were very, very comfortable going into the break. And we let it slip, Phil, didn't we? It's the first time in a long time where we can say that, but we let our concentration slip. They'd obviously been fired up at half-time by their manager, came flying out the blocks. We had simply no answer for it, did we?
No, I mean, it was a topsy-turvy game to watch. I thought it was a gripping game to watch, if I'm being honest with you, Gav. It was a really compelling 90 minutes of football. I think first half, it couldn't have been much better from a Sunderland point of view, could it? You know, everything that we would have wanted the players to have done, they did. Loads of aggression in our play, loads of energy. I thought the likes of Embleton were playing like men possessed. We scored 2 brilliantly worked goals through Ahmad and through Dan Neil. We've got Burnley where they want them. Vincent Kompany's looking a little bit as if to say, what's going on here on the touchline? It couldn't have been better. And then in the second half, I have to say, I think, just bringing up Chris's point about maybe, you know, the fans maybe thought we had it in the bag. Only speaking personally here, I knew that Burnley were going to come back and hit us hard in the second half because I knew that Vincent Kompany would give them a rocket at half-time. I think he would have demanded a reaction from them. So I had a feeling that Burnley were going to respond very, very strongly in the second half. And I thought they were very good in the second half, but they were aided and abetted by some really, really slack, loose, poor play from Sunderland. And everything that we didn't want to do in the second half, we did, unfortunately. We just seemed to lose our heads. Our composure went, and as soon as Burnley got back to 2-2 with those two rapid-fire goals, which I'm sure we'll come on to, it was as if our heads just dropped. The belief started to seep out of the team. The fans started to get even more edgy than they were. And then the momentum just went away from us, and we just could not get it back, Gav. We just lost control of the game. We were starting to lose our discipline, and in the end, you pay the price. So yeah, it was a very Jekyll and Hyde performance from Sunderland. There was plenty of good stuff on display in the first half. Very, very poor second.
No, I can't disagree with any of that, and it's becoming a theme of our play, really. And Tony Mowbray keeps talking about it in his post-match and his pre-match interviews he's doing, Chris. But we just physically, we're not competing, are we? We've not got the players. I mean, you look at the injury list. I'm not just isolating a particular position here, but we've got Stewart, who's good defensively. We've got Sims, who's a big lad. Ballard missing. Guchu works hard, I guess. Who else have I missed out? Agialise was missing. Anybody we've got with height seems to be missing at the minute. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking physically we're just not competing. First goal, I mean, we'll go probably all the way through the action as we go on, but we just before we came on air, right, we sat and watched the goals together, and the overriding theme of all of them was physically we just weren't competing, First one, not good enough marking on the corner. Second one, you're expecting somebody to go across and make a tackle. I think it was Sirkin. He doesn't. They score from it. The third one, again, not good enough. I think it's Try Hume on that occasion who doesn't really put a full tackle in there, and they end up scoring, although it's a great finish. And then the last one, just poor communication at the back. I mean, like Phil said, all avoidable mistakes, all avoidable goals, and really we've only got ourselves to blame.
Yeah, but you're talking about the kind of physicality of the team. People are talking about missing strikers being the problem. People are talking about the size of our squad being the problem, that we lost 4-2. People talking about all of these kind of high level things, but we got it right in the first half. So
yeah,
we got it so right in the first half that all of those things didn't fall apart in 15 minutes at half time. We showed in the first half we are a fantastic side, and we I don't think Burnley quite knew what hit them in that first half. We absolutely blew them away. Just to give the side a bit of credit for the rest of the season, I think we've played at that level in the first half in quite a few games this season. The only difference is I think we noticed it more because we went in 2-0 up. We didn't create a hatful of chances in that first half. We created a few, but we weren't kind of creating chance after chance. The problem is that people are going to these problems like, oh, we haven't got a striker, we haven't got a fit striker, we haven't got people to bring off the bench, we haven't got this. It was fantastic first half. From my point of view, I mean, what you're talking about with those tackles and things like that, from my point of view, it was a psychological issue. I just think we came out flat, and they couldn't pick that intensity back up again because that intensity was so high in the first half that as soon as Burnley got the ball, they were on them, and go back to kickoff, we just stood off them. We stood 10 yards off them, and that set the tone. When that psychology goes like that, it's hard to pick it back up. And they got a goal within, what was a 49th minute. So they got a goal within 5 minutes. And then you could just tell that we just got so nervy. Our heads just went. And that's when that happens, it's like a domino effect. And then you start giving the ball away, and you're not doing the things that you were doing automatically just 20 minutes prior to that. I mean, the tackles are a symptom of that. The marking was a symptom of that. We just lost our heads, and for me, it was a mentality issue. It wasn't, we can go into, people are going, oh well, if we brought in a free agent striker, we would have won that game. Well, no, because I don't think that was the issue. It was just, something based on that 90 minutes where we had a fantastic first half. Half time, we didn't get it right. We didn't come back out with the right attitude in the second half, and then there was a domino effect. It snowballed from there, and then it went. It's football. It happens.
Is that, do you think, Phil, just a symptom of having such a young team? I mean, that team that was out there, don't know what the average age was, but got to be one of the youngest teams in the league.
Yeah.
Do you think that's maybe just a symptom of having such a young team that psychologically, mentally, they're more prone to switch off because they just don't have that experience that, perhaps a more experienced team might have had? Like first half, you're looking at it and that's as free-flowing and as good as we've played all season, some great stuff, some great goals. But when it comes to the other side, when a good quality team turn the screw, have you got the stones? Have you got the wherewithal? Have you got the spirit amongst you as a team to respond? You know, is that something that we just say, these are young players and this is something that's going to happen from time to time? Or is that too easy an excuse to make, do you think?
No, I think Chris is absolutely spot on there, Gav. I think it was totally psychological in that second half. You know, there was a lot of red herrings floating about on social media. Blame Speakman, blame the lack of a striker, blame Mowbray, blame this, blame that. It was almost like a boxer who lands one or two really good blows on his opponent, and then instead of going in there and finishing him off, steps back and admires his work. The opponent is able to regroup and come back with some heavy blows, you know, of his own. I think it was totally psychological in the second half. But what I would say, Gav, is that, you know, such is the profile of this squad and the youthful nature of this squad, that at the risk of sounding a little bit, maybe talking nonsense here, I do think what happened can happen from time to time. I do think that, you know, football, as we know, is a game of momentum, and the ebbs and flows of momentum in a game of football are so crucial. And the problem with us at the moment is that when the opposition gets a head of steam up and they do start to get some momentum going and they really take the game to us, I think we struggle to contain them at times. And certainly that's what happened in the second half. I think Burnley, they hit us very, very hard, particularly down the wings. We really struggled to keep control of it. And I think psychologically it did have a massive effect on us. So, yeah, I think Chris was absolutely spot on there, Gav. I think it was a mental issue in that second half. Instead of keeping our composure and, you know, just managing the game as smartly and as you know, calmly as we could, I think we allowed Burnley to kind of drag us into a more open game, which I think we lost control and we lost our discipline. So if you go, you know, I've got the match programme in front of me here and I'm just looking through the, you know, Burnley's team. Matthew Lawton, Charlie Taylor, Jack Cork, Josh Brownhill, Jay Rodriguez, Ashley Barnes, Ashley Westwood, etc., etc. They're all players with Premier League experience, Gav. They're hard-bitten, they're well-travelled, they know their onions, they've been around the block. We don't have that at this moment in time, and that's just a statement of fact. So, yeah, I think the young profile of the squad can lead to results like we saw. The most important thing is to learn from it, though.
Yeah, and as we've said, and as we said in the preview show, and as Tony Mowbray pointed out after the game, Burnley are a good team. They were in the Premier League last season, as you just said, and there was a moment at 3-2 when I looked down to the touchline and they're bringing on Jack Cork and Jay Rodriguez, and I'm thinking, there's a bit of a difference here. I'm not saying they were miles apart, because first half we were the better side. Yeah. But I think it's a 90-minute game. It's not a 45-minute game, and they managed it better than we did. They did their job first half, Sunderland, but second half Burnley come out. They knew what they had to do. They knew they had to get an early goal. They knew if they got a set piece or a corner or anything, if they could get the ball wide, that they had to take advantage of the fact that we simply aren't equipped to deal with it, and they did. That's the thing. Sunderland, from a mentality perspective, when you're going in a half time 2-0 up, everybody should be sat there going, right, we don't give them the early goal they're going to need. We don't concede sloppy goals. We just stay tight for 10-15 minutes. They're going to come at us. Let's see that through. Once they've had that little wave where they try to come at us and it doesn't work, we regroup. We maybe try and get a third. We try and hold together. And to be fair, we've done that at times this season. We've won games this season where we've done that. But, you know, on this occasion we didn't. It's just one of those things, I guess.
Yeah, and I can't disagree with you both on that kind of point about Burnley. I mean, it's absolute fact. I mean, what you've all pointed out, absolutely true. Premier League experience, fantastic players they brought off the bench and all this sort of stuff. But I think going back to what we talked about in the preview in midweek, Gav, I do think this game was still about us, and I think because we are a good side, and like we showed in our first half, and what we didn't come out with that second half and have a plan for us. It seemed like, you know, like I said, we gave Burnley too much time that we didn't give them in the first half. We changed what we were doing, and I'm not sure why we. I mean, you know, like I think it was a psychological issue, but you know, there are hints that have come out that have said, you know, did the players come out a little bit confused on how they were supposed to, you know, keep hold of our 2-0 lead? You know, were they supposed to?
It was Dan Neil in his post-match interviews. People should probably dig these out, but I found it interesting anyway, as I heard him on BBC Newcastle and also on the club website. When he was asked about the game generally, he said, well, you know, half of us were doing one thing and half of us were doing the other. Yeah. You know, it's quite intriguing.
But that's why I think it comes back to us, because I think we dictated the game, but I think we dictated the game in the first half in a positive way for us. And in the second half, we dictated it in a negative way because we stepped off Burnley, and Burnley just went, well, look, they made a change. They pushed some players on, but they needed the time that we gave them on the ball that we didn't give them in the first half. And like you said, I mean, when it comes to that, because we've seen, I can't remember who it was, I think it was Watford away, when we gave players of that quality time in the middle of the park and time on the ball. I mean, you look at that, I think it was the second goal, I think it was, where it was the kind of cross-come shot. I mean, how much time did he have out wide? And in the first half, he didn't have that time on the ball to do that. So, yes, completely agree. It was Burnley. Burnley are a cracking side, but they took advantage of what we did and they reacted to us. And I think it was about what we did.
I think, Gav, as well, just picking up on the point you made there about the quality of Burnley's squad, it reminded me of when we played Norwich at the stadium, and Dean Smith was able to bring on Timu Pukki and Todd Cantwell.
Yeah, I remember.
And that's that's the difference. What these teams, when we're playing these teams that have kind of got a core of ex-Premier League players, as Norwich and Burnley do, when they can call on them to come on and change a game in the second half, as they did, that's the difference. And that's not bemoaning the fact that where we are in terms of squad quality, that's just the fact that they're on a different trajectory to us in terms of the development, the quality of their squad, etc., etc. But, just to come back to what Chris said there about the game being all about us, I agree. I mean, Burnley were excellent in the second half, but they were aided and abetted, as we said earlier, by our own mistakes and some very, very slack play. If we'd have continued in the same vein in the second half as we did in the first, the outcome of the game, in my opinion, would have been very, very different. But it was as if we'd done the hard work to get ourselves into that 2-0 lead. We went in at half-time, and then instead of the kind of core of the experienced players saying, more of the same, boys, we've got them where we want them, let's not lose our heads, let's just keep it calm, it was as if that went just completely out the window. And I think Dan Neil's comments were probably accurate, to be honest with you. I think the game plan in the second half was so confused that I don't think anybody really knew what to do. And I don't think it was a lack of effort either, Gav. I've seen quite a few people saying that the players gave up. I don't think they gave up at all. I think they lost their heads and they didn't know where to turn. So I don't think we should mistake confusion about what to do with a lack of effort, in my opinion. That would be very harsh, in my view.
Phil, in there you said a few words. You said keep calm. And I think that was actually the problem. That I think the players panicked. The players completely panicked because the biggest problem for me in the second half was keeping possession of the football. Because what we did, we ended up kind of at one point we were just trying to kick it anywhere to get it out. And the first half, somebody would have taken an extra touch and just laid it off to somebody, and played back, even gone back to Patterson because they had that confidence and they weren't panicking. Second half, the football was like a hot potato for us. None of them wanted it. They just wanted to get rid, and they just thought, right, well, I'm just going to look up and punt it, and the ball kept coming back. The more it kept coming back, it was just like an avalanche that the players were panicking more and more, and that's where the game went for me.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, so let's run through the action quickly then. So the first goal from Sunderland, obviously in the first half, came from Ahmad, and I've got to be honest, I think their goalkeeper has done us a favour. But good play from us in the build-up. Jack Clark does really well, times the pass brilliantly. And to be fair to Ahmad, in recent weeks, we've criticised him taking far too much time on the ball when he should be shooting. On this occasion, he hit it first time, passes it into the bottom corner, keeper goes the other way. Can he goal, to be fair? We deserved it up to that point. I think the first 15, 16 minutes before the goal, we were the better team, Phil, and deserved it. And like I say, it was a good finish from Ahmad, wasn't it?
It was, and I think that'll do his confidence the world of good. He's shown flashes in recent weeks of what he can do. I'd like him to become a bit more ruthless in front of goal. I think, he needs to develop that cold streak in front of goal where if he's in a good position. This links back to a wider point we were making after the Blackburn game, weren't we, about how we are a little bit shot shy at times in front of goal. Unwillingness to shoot when we get in good positions. Hesitancy when we need, confidence to take the shot on. And I think Ahmad has probably been guilty of that in recent weeks to a certain extent, but he took it well. It was well worked as well, and it was the perfect start, Gav, as you said. We couldn't have started the game any better, and that was what made the second half collapse even more inexplicable for me. But I think the goal for Ahmad will have done his confidence the world of good, because there is a player in there, in my opinion, who can make an impact at this level, and that can't have done him any harm at all. So it was good to see. Yeah,
what did you make of Ahmad's goal, Chris, and more generally his performance? Do you think he's done enough to keep his place or not?
Yeah, I thought. I mean, how can you say? Because based on the first half, we should go out with the same 11 next time. based on the second half, we should ring the changes. So it's kind of, where do you go with it? But I mean, I thought Ahmad was absolutely brilliant the first half. I mean, what I will say about our start, and again, at first half generally, I thought we were brilliant, and everyone's rightly kind of saying how good we were that first half. I really don't think it's been that different to quite a lot of the games this season. I think we've played at that level quite a lot. It's just because we were 2-0, everyone got more excited than if we've gone in goalless, that because, I mean, looking at my notes, before Ahmad scored, we scored on about the 16th minute. I've only got before then that, Embleton had half a chance. And that's it. We weren't kind of peppering the goal with shots. Let's not pretend we were kind of having chance after chance and their keeper was, I mean, we pushed them back and we had them under pressure, but we weren't rattling their goal with shots. But when it came, Clark did his thing. And actually, what Clark did there, I think he failed to do on a couple of other occasions where he actually made that run and got into a fantastic position and didn't release the ball or didn't play a kind of a pass that gave somebody a chance. I think he actually had one in the second half where he kind of hit it at Ahmad a bit too hard and Ahmad kind of ended up skewing it wide.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Clark was brilliant and a fantastic finish, and grateful to the Burnley keeper for lying down and watching it roll in.
One thing I didn't mention before we got into the goals was it was about a minute 20 into the game. The ref pulls out a yellow card, which set the tone. And we on Thursday and for the last few weeks on all the pods really, we've slaughtered the referees, and rightly so. But I actually think the referee this weekend was great.
Yeah,
I thought he'd done a really good job of refereeing the game. Given that yellow card a minute and a half into the game set the tone, because as we've said repeatedly, Chris, and you in particular over recent weeks, there's been different guidance this year to referees when it comes to how they manage games. And what we're seeing is a lot of refs just refusing to give anything for the first sort of half an hour of games for whatever reason. But this guy was straight in his back pocket, got a yellow card out for Goodmanson. And I actually think after that point, it sort of showed the players, right, okay, the referee's in control here. And you've got to be fair to him. He did all right, didn't he? I mean, like I say, we've slagged them off enough, haven't we? So we should probably give him a little bit of praise for how he did.
He was good. He was good. He was strong. But I do think, if I dare say it, but it's about time. I think we got the fair share of the decisions. Actually, that there was some 50-50 decisions that I think that went our way. And at times, I think he missed a couple of handballs in that first half as well. That we did. But it's about time where we got the rub of the green with the ref.
Yeah. So we followed up that goal from Ahmad 4 minutes later with a lovely left-footed strike by Dan Neil, which I think he hit pretty well through a crowd of bodies. We watched it back, like I said before we started recording, and their goalkeeper does us a favour, I think. Again, he's pretty much on that post where the goal slips by him. You were saying, Chris, you felt that he was probably shaping up to save something up a height, and Neil's maybe caught him off guard with the strike, right? I think it was a good goal, but yeah, probably again their goalkeeper should have done better.
Yeah, well, he had a nice sit down for us again, didn't he? He kind of rolled over for both of our goals. I can't remember him making another save actually. That he actually made a save during the game. I think all he did was pick the ball out of the net pretty much. I can't really remember off the top of my head. But yeah, I mean, Dan Neil hit it. I mean, left foot. When the ball drops to a player like that, you don't quite know how he's going to make contact. Whether it's going to go 20 yards over the crossbar, which normally it does when it drops, especially when you realise it's a player who his left foot might not be his natural foot, but absolutely fantastic finish. But what I do want to make a point of in that goal was the ball in, because this is where Embleton being 2-footed. I mean, if he gets a consistency into his game, Embleton could be just, even at this level, he could be a fantastic player. It's that hot and cold thing that if he can sort out, then he would just be a permanent fixture in the team, because on that right-hand side, just naturally pulling it back onto his left and knocking the ball in. He could have knocked it in with his right, he could have knocked it in with his left, but a fantastic ball in, and that's where Evans, I think, won the ball at the back post, and fantastic finish by Neil, but Embleton was cracking on that right-hand side.
Yeah, the goal, Phil, you happy with it? I guess you were happy at the time, but in terms of the way we worked it, it was like Chris says, great ball in from Embleton, and we dealt with the bounce. We actually won the header. It came down to us, and we got the goal.
I actually didn't realise until I watched the highlights, because I was sitting at the far end of the stadium, so I couldn't actually quite see where the ball had gone into the net. It looked to me as if the keeper, Daniel had actually gone far post, and only on the highlights did I see that the keeper's been beaten at his near post. So it wasn't the greatest piece of goalkeeping you've ever seen, but it was a well worked goal. And just to pick up on Chris's point about Embleton, I do think that he is an inconsistent player, but he's got a lot of talent. I do think, and in one sense, I admire Tony Mowbray for sticking with him, actually, because that's one thing that we've praised Mowbray for, isn't it? Is that the fact that he is giving players as many chances as he possibly can to make a claim for a start in the team, and I think Embleton's kind of living proof of that. He can be a bit anonymous at times in games, without a doubt. There can be periods in games where he won't really do a great deal, but he's also got that bit of magic, as Peter Reid would have said, in his locker that can really turn a game around. So yeah, I think that again, we keep using this word consistency, don't we, about players at this level, but they've got to get it, and I think Embleton is living proof of that, without a doubt. But yeah, it was a very well worked goal, without a doubt.
Yeah, he was brilliant last weekend. Poor on Tuesday, good first half.
Yeah,
this week I'd say you don't get two good performances from him in the ROKERs.
Yeah.
It's really it's tough, because I really want to like him, and I do like him. I do think there's aspects of his game I admire and stuff, but it's like, when are you going to put these, because he's not a kid anymore. Do you know what I mean? He's got a little bit of experience now, not loads, but he has played quite a lot of football. He's well established now, and he needs to start putting runs of good performances together, not just blowing hot and cold.
You're saying he's played a lot of football, and he's played a decent amount of football, but I actually don't think, with the stop-start kind of nature of how his career's gone out on loan, he hasn't actually played a full season that many times through injuries or whatever it's been. So, to be a permanent fixture in the team for a full season is actually, it's actually a pretty tough thing to do, and it depends on what stage of your career you're actually able to do that. And not only that, it's his first time to, step up to the Championship, playing week in, week out at this level, and being a fixture in the team. But if he can get that consistency right, there's no argument, there's no debate to have how talented he is. It's just, if you can get that consistency right, he's going to be one of the first names on the team sheet.
It was interesting how we shaped up, though, because normally he would play either deeper alongside Evans, or he would play just ahead of Pritchard or just alongside Pritchard. But on this occasion, Pritchard was sort of out on the left-hand side. Embleton played as the 10, and it worked in that first half, definitely. And Pritchard suffered for it, mind, because he didn't see as much of the ball as he normally would.
No, he didn't, and it was interesting. And look, I mean, I'll be completely honest, I picked up on it, but Danny Collins did call it out in the commentary. But I was looking at it as Danny Collins actually said it. Embleton, when we didn't have possession of the football, Embleton was pushing on them, so we almost had a 4-4-2. And Jack Clark and Embleton was kind of split their centre half, so they couldn't kind of knock it about the back and get some momentum going there. And he pushed right up, so they had the ball, and we pushed right up and had Evans and Neil just as. And then when we had the ball, you saw that Embleton kind of picked it up in those pockets, and you saw the clear plan in the first half that just seemed to go out the window after half time.
Yep, and we'll get on to that bit now. So at half time, they brought off Ashley Barnes. Did he get booked in the first half? I don't think so. But Ashley Barnes came off at half time for Manuel Benson, who changed the game. I think he was brilliant. He was absolutely outstanding. But that had nothing to do with Burnley's first goal, which came just 4 or 5 minutes after half time. They get a set piece. It's knocked into the air. There's a bunch of issues with this goal, but they get a set piece. It's knocked into the area. We don't deal with it. It gets to Nathan Teller, and despite the fact he's 5'8", he scores a header. Let's run through it then. So the goal itself, Phil, was, I mean, we've seen this so many times recently. Yes, we are poor at set pieces. We don't have the height to go man-to-man on set pieces. So what we are doing is we're playing, and it must be so easy to prepare for if you're an opposition manager, because we've only really got one way of defending these set pieces. We put Onai and Bart, and I think on this occasion it was Sirkin, because Elise wasn't there, marking zonally along the 6-yard box, and everybody else's job is just to disrupt. And on this occasion we didn't disrupt. Corey Evans is the man marking Taylor Harwood-Bellis, he gets caught ball watching and Bellis knocks it across and Teller scores. It's poor, isn't it? I mean, his job is just to be disruptive and he gets caught ball watching. And I actually thought Corey Evans was great, but he made a rick for that goal. Like,
yeah, he did. And, it's not a secret, Gav, that we do struggle from set pieces. It's been an issue for quite some time and it hasn't been remedied yet. It will be, hopefully, when Daniel Ballard comes back, and I think Adji Elise was a big miss when he was ruled out. I thought, oh God, here we go again, because he'd been so influential in recent games. So that's been problematic for us, a lack of height and a lack of physicality at the back. But yeah, the goal itself is just, it's elementary stuff, really. As you said, Corey Evans, he's got to do more to keep Taylor Harwood-Bellis from getting that ball back in. I know Harwood-Bellis is a big lad, but Evans has got to be a bit stronger there. But for me, I think Anthony Patterson gets caught in no man's land as the ball is played back in. And I think that this is, I might, run the risk of getting slaughtered for this, but I think command of his area at this moment in time for Patterson is a weakness in his game. And I'd like to see him improve that. And I think back to how Thomas Sorensen was when he first came here and he was bossing around defenders who were a lot older than him and a lot more experienced than him. I think Anthony Patterson needs to start doing that. I think he needs to start cleaning people out if necessary. You've got to run the risk of being clobbered if you're in that position as a goalkeeper. You've got to take the chance. You come out, you take the ball, and if you get hit in the process, that's just part of the job, I'm afraid. And I think he could have been a bit better for the goal. And I think Patterson's a fantastic goalkeeper, and he's going to be great for us over the coming seasons. But he's not the finished article, and I think a weakness in his game was exposed. But yeah, it was a very sloppy goal to concede, Gav, without a doubt.
What's irritating for me, Chris, is that in the first half he did that. He did those things. He did clean people out. He did come flying out and catching balls. Like, he'd done all of those things in the first half, and then on that set piece he didn't. I mean, talk us through your thoughts on the goal. I know you've got some notes there and what you thought.
Yeah, I mean, you have gone kind of called it and gone through it. I mean, exactly what I think as well. I mean, yes, okay, we're at a disadvantage with the makeup of our team in terms of set pieces and winning the ball in the air, but we've got a plan. And we put that plan in place, and we've got those 3 players on the 6-yard box, as you said, Gav. The rest just put players off. Problem is, that plan just clearly wasn't implemented properly. And, there's been plenty of times, like you say, Gav, even in the first half, they had corners, and we won the ball and got it clear because we got the plan right. Now, when you've got a 6'2", 6'4" centre half, kind of have a clear header at the back post and knock it back into a dangerous area. I mean, it's probably, chances are it's only going to go one way after that, especially because you've got somebody completely unmarked in the 6-yard box. But Evans has got to do better at the back post. And look, he'll be the first to know it, and I'm sure Mowbray. I mean, if it's clear to us, it's going to be clear to them. They're going to be having words. Yeah. Evans will know he didn't do his job properly. And yeah, he's got to put an elbow in. He's got to give him a nudge. He can't be able to have a clear header to put the ball where he wants. And on Patterson, Phil, completely agree. I mean, people going on about he was pushed. I mean, it's to me, he looked like he was kind of, instead of preparing himself for what was going to happen, he was like whinging about being pushed. And it's like,
you've got to be stronger, haven't you?
You're gonna be pushed. People are going to push you all the time. You don't just kind of, go into the goal and then saunter back and then you're out of position. You get back into position because you're not going to get decisions like that. You're not going to get things given. And if it is, you play until the whistle anyway. And he needs to get back into position and be ready for that second header, because if he's in position, he doesn't head that ball, 3-4 yards out. Patterson collects it or Patterson punches it. So we've got to be better all round.
Yeah, I think Nathan Teller, he gave us a bit of a lesson in how to be disruptive when you're not big, because he was involved in most of the goals in that way, and he was on this occasion. He was the one pushing Patterson, and then putting it in the back of the net just seconds later, and then as we'll come to find, he was involved again. Their second goal then came about 10 minutes later. Not good enough again, Chris, is it really? We allowed them to run at us. I think it's Dennis Serkin who, he starts off far too far away from the man. He's about 10 yards off. Once he does get closer, by that point, Benson's already cut onto his left foot and whipped the ball in. It's never a shot. It evades the heads of 2 Burnley players, if I remember rightly, and floats into the far corner where Patterson is. He's got to do better again, I think, there. But, it's not just him, because in the build-up, Serkin's not doing a good enough job of stopping the cross. I mean, That's what you tell kids. Don't let the ball come into the box. Stop the cross. If you stop the cross, there's no chance of them scoring. It's as simple as that. That's why these players are very good players, and they find ways to work the ball in the box. You're not always going to be able to stop it. But I think on that occasion, we made it very, very easy for Benson to whip it in. And it wasn't exactly a whip. Was there loads of pace on the ball? I don't think so. No. It was sort of medium height. It wasn't exactly high. It just evaded everybody. Patterson, I think, gets unsighted by that. And I think he's got to do better again, to be honest, Chris.
But you can go back even further, to before you even get to the goal, because there's half an hour left at this point. Still half an hour of the game left, but we're in complete panic mode at this point.
Yeah.
And the amount of sliced, rushed clearances we made, which sometimes went straight up in the air, sometimes just went into no man's land. I wouldn't have been too disappointed if it was like Johnny Wilkinson into the far corner. If you're going to do it properly. But I mean, like I said, some of them were sliced 10 yards. Every time, 100% of the time, basically, they went back to Burnley. And then that just kept heaping the pressure on. And the other problem, what that created as well, is we dropped far too deep. So basically, we invited Burnley to kind of keep building that pressure. And we didn't kind of take a moment to put a foot on the ball and just say, right, let's get out, let's push up, 20 yards up the pitch. So, I mean, it came from there. And then when Benson got the ball, I mean, if you go back, if anyone looks at the highlights, look at when Benson picks up the ball. I mean, Sirkin is already standing 15 yards away from him. I mean, he's got that time to look up and think, right, well, what am I going to do with this? And Benson's already made his mind up before Sirkin gets to him because he's had that time to think. Because Sirkin doesn't sprint out to him and close him down. It takes him a while to get across because, I mean, there's that distance to cover and Benson's already made up his mind. He knows exactly what he's going to do. Cuts inside and then plays that ball in. And, I will give Patterson a bit of leeway to say that the two Burnley players who made that run into the box, I actually thought it was a great ball in. I mean, as a winger from that position, you play the ball in with the intent of a player to get a nick, but you aim for that back post as well. So I think it was a cracking ball that he played in because that's what you do in that position. But those Burnley players were pretty close to getting the ball, and I'll kind of give Patterson a bit of leeway to say, well, he was expecting that touch, but it still shouldn't have snuck into the back post.
Nah, he was. I just look at his starting position for the goal, and he's that side of the post.
Yeah,
and I don't know the work on these things in training, and I don't know. I feel like he should have done better, but the third then came after a spell of pressure. To be fair, they just kept coming. Burnley. We made a change a couple of minutes after they got that second goal. We brought on Jewson Bennett for Alex Pritchard to try and regain some control. Mowbray said after the game he felt as though we just had to try and get back into the game somehow and give ourselves a bit of fresh impetus. Didn't really work. Phil did it, and like I say, Burnley got the third, the first time they were ahead in the game.
Yeah.
And it was a cracking finish, but yet again, there's stuff in the build-up of the goal where I feel like we should have done better and we could have prevented that.
Yeah, I mean, we keep coming back to this, Gav, don't we? Is that, three of Burnley's goals were horrible from our point of view. And even the world-class one that we're talking about now from Zaroury was, the finish was emphatic and there's nothing Patterson could have done. I mean, that was just an absolutely fantastic finish. He curled it right into the corner. If we'd have scored that goal, we'd have been talking about it for ages afterwards. But the build-up, again, we keep coming back to this phrase, the build-up to the goal, Trihume pulls out of a challenge that he really has to commit to fully. He's got to go and like Adji did against Wigan last week when he goes in at full speed. He takes the ball, he flattens the man, everybody picks up, and it's a different story. So I think Trihume's got to do better in that situation. But yeah, there's nothing he can do about the finish. But again, we just talk about these little moments, and I think if Trihume looks back at that, which I'm sure he will do, he'll think, could I have been a bit stronger there? Could I have been a bit more firm with my challenge there? And I think he could have been without a doubt. So again, self-inflicted, Gav, without a doubt.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that Phil makes there, Chris, about the commitment to the tackle. At that stage in the game, a massive tackle where he cleans the man out would have got the crowd off their seat and would have got people back behind them, and we might have built a little bit of momentum, and it just would have changed the atmosphere, I think. And instead, he doesn't commit to it. It's sort of a half tackle. and he's weak, and the other lad commits to it and gets away with the ball. And that's sometimes the difference. Like, my mate was making this point to me after the game, because I'm not a massive Lyndon Gooch fan. I always, people who listen to this every week know I'm not. But what I do commend him for is his commitment, his heart, his desire. All of those things are there with Gooch. And, when people, I'm like screaming out for a different option in that right back berth. Hume's got his chance, brilliant first half, but it's in those little moments where you do notice the difference. You think, well, would Gucci have went through the man? I think he would have, and Hume's got to look at that back after the game and go, if I want to be in this team, I've got to play at full throttle. I've got to give it everything. If I want to keep him out of the team next weekend, I've got to show Tony Mowbray I mean business. For 45 minutes, he did. And then the second half, like everybody else, when we lost control of the game, he was out of the game. And I just, again, an experienced player would have went through the ball there and would have took the man with him.
Gav, we can highlight Hume, and maybe rightly so. It was part of them, getting that 3-2 lead. But as you touched on there, every single player was guilty of it in that second half. We could go through that second. We could go through that second half. We could go back to the first half, find a highlight where every single player put a tackle in and went in hard and went in, with that kind of intensity. And then we can go through the second half and find every single player doing the opposite in the second half.
Yeah.
So
Hume did it in the first half. I remember a great one down and out at the edge of our box.
Hume did it at least twice in the second half. Yeah, he almost had a standing ovation a couple of times because of the cracking tackles he was putting in the first half. So look, we can pick on Hume, if you want, because it leads up to the goal. That's fair enough. People can do that. But let's not say it was only Hume who did that. No. Every single player, because their heads had gone. Their heads had completely gone. They were kind of, I think their mentality just thought, well, Burnley are now stronger, and they weren't going into those tackles. And you can say maybe experienced players would do that, but I think Evans was guilty of it as well. So, okay, let's highlight Hume because it was part of the goal, but let's not pretend it was just Hume guilty of it. I think every single player were guilty of it in that second half.
It's a collective effort, isn't it? Hume was probably looking at his teammates and thinking, well, oh God, Dan looks a bit nervous in possession. Alex looks a bit nervous now. Danny looks a bit nervous, etc., etc. And it as you said earlier on, Chris, it just snowballs, doesn't it? The players start to, one player starts to get a little bit edgy, and then it just filters through the whole team. And then before you know it, everybody freezes and nobody knows what to do in that situation, do they? So, I certainly don't think that we should. I don't want to sound like we're digging out Hume unfairly here, but his was a symptom, as you said, of a wider issue that affected the team in that second half, without a doubt.
And the worst thing that affected us was when the heads went like that, in possession of the ball, and we'll come on to it. It might be a segue into the fourth goal, because one of the biggest symptoms of it in terms of possession was nobody wanted the ball, and nobody was getting into good positions to receive the ball. And nobody was moving, nobody was supporting each other and saying, right, you've got possession, I can see you're in trouble, I'm going to get into a position where you can give me the ball, or I'm going to say, just pass it back, I'm going to give you an instruction, I'm going to help you out by telling you what's on. And that just all broke down, and we'll come on to it, but the fourth goal was a perfect example of what happens when you get like that.
Well, here's a question for you, Chris, then. So after that third goal from Burnley, they brought on, like I said earlier, they brought on Cork, they brought on Rodriguez, who are both quality players. Our response was to bring off Embleton, bring off Evans, bring on Michu, and bring on Barr. Is it working, just throwing kids on and taking players off and hoping that they'll rescue the game? It hasn't worked since pretty much like Watford, has it? I don't know.
No.
But Gav, that's to me, that's a red herring, because the game had gone by then. Had
it though? We were only 3-2 down. We had to do something.
No, but yes, okay. Well, exactly. I mean, you've just kind of called it that he had to do something, and he's only got what he's got on the bench, and that's what he's got on the bench. And sometimes it's going to work, but that if he's throwing young kids on to try and change the game in an attacking sense. But the problem was we weren't attacking. We needed someone to put in those tackles to kind of change that mentality, to change the way the game was going in a kind of the physical kind of nature of the game. And it wasn't happening. But the comment I do want to make about subs is that my kind of issue is we're making the same subs at the same time of the game. every single game. Now, the problem is with that, you're gonna have those players like in their preparation for week in, week out. I mean, that's just what they're going to get used to in their kind of mindset. They're going to be saying, well, I'm on the pitch till, an hour to go, 15 minutes to go. And they're just going to know that, I mean, I'd love to go through the games and see how many games in a row Pritchard's been brought off with 20 minutes to go, 15 minutes to go. How many times Embleton's been brought off? How many times Evans been brought off? I mean, I think it's been the same players being replaced by the same players. And if you do the same thing all the time, I mean, the change needed to be made. They got that goal 5 minutes into the second half and we could all see which way the traffic was going. Let's change it then. Don't wait until the game's gone almost and heads are down when you've gone 3-2 down with 20 minutes to go, 15 minutes to go, whenever you're going to make the change. Make it earlier, react to how it's going to happen. So, yes, I've got an issue with subs generally. I mean, in this game, I just think, by the time he made it, the game was gone.
I think if I can just touch on Chris's point there, Gav, I think it's an interesting point that you made about the substitutions. Now, I look at a player like Edouard Michou, for example, and he is, in my opinion, he's not the kind of player you should be bringing on when you have lost control of the game and when it is starting to run away from you and when you're scrambling to try and get control back. I think Michou is the kind of player who is best in a role where you're on top in the game, you've got control of everything, and he can come on and do his stuff. Bar, I think, is a different kettle of fish. I think Bar is more of an industrious type player who can really make an impact in that situation. But I think what you said, Chris, about the timing of the substitutions is absolutely spot on. I think Mowbray was on the back foot, frankly. I think, to be honest with you, I think his head was probably as scrambled as the players' heads appeared to be as that second half wore on. It was as if he couldn't believe what was going on either. So, yeah, I think that when you start throwing them on, to me, it's not the issue of throwing kids on as such. I don't think that's necessarily the issue here. I think it's a question of when you throw them on and in what situation you're bringing them into. That's the difference. I don't think it's as black and white as what you said necessarily, Gav. But yeah, I think that the dynamic of the game at that point was all going in Burnley's favour, and you're asking them to come on and make an impact at a time when the game was really starting to swing away from us, which is always going to be tricky at the best of times. So yeah, I think Mowbray was probably a little bit too late with his changes. But again, that's something that he'll have to answer for, and I don't think he'll shy away from that.
No, my only problem, I guess, was that with them changes in particular was where we were losing control of the game wasn't through the middle; it was down the sides. It was, I don't know. It was just very like Chris said. He was bringing the same players on for the same players. It was like for like changes. Michou wasn't going to change the game so much that we were going to get back into it. I know you look at the rest of the subs and there wasn't like a great deal there. He didn't bring on Diaku. Matete, I'm guessing he just doesn't fancy Matete because we haven't really seen much of him. But if we were going to bring anybody on to give us a bit more bite, I would have probably put him on because at least he's going to put a tackle in and he's going to put his set about. But even then, I'm looking and I'm thinking, well, what can you really do? There's not a lot there, is there? You
have both mentioned Michou, and I don't necessarily disagree. But bringing Michou on earlier, when we were struggling to put a foot on the ball, I mean, Michou looks like he's that type of player who can handle a football and can keep possession. And bringing him on after Burnley pull one back, and it's all ifs and buts, and you might have been absolutely spot on with saying he wasn't the right one, but who's to say if you brought him on after Burnley started getting back into the game and just tell him, look, put a foot on the ball, slow the game down, calm it down, just keep possession of the football. We might not have gotten into the spiral that we'd gotten into after that. I mean, it's all ifs and buts, and who knows? But it's about targeting your substitutions to do a specific job. At the minute, it seems to me, 20 minutes to go, 15 minutes to go, it's right, let's make the substitutions. Regardless of the situation, regardless of what changes we need on the pitch, it's making the same subs for almost the sake of doing it, rather than saying, right, this is going wrong, Michou, get the ball, keep possession, do this job for me to change the game. It's just 15 minutes to go, right, lads, come on, it's time. I mean, do it for a reason.
That's sort of the impression I got from listening to Mowbray after the game. He even said, we're looking to these young players to come on and give us a boost. And I'm thinking, well, it's become a bit. We're doing it every game now, and there's no real thought or logic behind it. And like you've just said, I mean, this does segue us into the fourth goal, because it was a complete lack of understanding which really led to that fourth goal. Barr hangs onto it a little bit too long, should probably pass it to Danny Bart. He gives it to Neil, who's asking for the ball, who's not in a position to do anything with it, gets caught out of possession, same as he did down at Sheffield United. It was a very similar goal to concede. And yeah, everything goes out the window. We concede the goal. Fans leave en masse from the stadium. There was about 5,000 of us left in the ground come the final whistle. And it was a microcosm of the whole performance, really, that one moment where we just, two lads who aren't on the same wavelength, not understanding each other.
Yeah.
And the ball ends up going to Neil. He loses possession, even though he's asked for it, Phil, and we concede. It was another avoidable poor goal, but as Chris has touched on, by that point, it feels like the game had totally passed us by, and we'd already tossed it off by that point, and maybe in the players' minds, they just wanted to get off the pitch and curl up in a ball.
Yeah, I think so. I think that it was just a kind of a sense of what the heck's going on here type of thing. They just it was obvious in that last 10 minutes that they just completely lost their composure, and the game had gone. And Burnley, to be fair to them, I mean, Burnley did what any good team would do in that situation, is really turn the screw and take advantage of the fact that we were starting to struggle. But yeah, the fourth goal, Gav, it's the classic one, isn't it? You lose possession in a dangerous area. Burnley have suddenly they're in a promising position. The ball slipped into Brownhill, I think it was, and he's just got the easy task of slotting it past Patterson for the fourth goal. So all four goals, obviously, you've got the first, which is a sloppy one from a corner. You've got the second, which is the speculative cross that nobody cuts out. The third's the world-class strike after a bit of sloppy play from us, and then the fourth, as we're watching it now, back on the highlights, is just a poor piece of indecisive play. So again, Burnley did what they had to do, but if we'd been a bit more calm in those key moments in that second half and just had the courage of our convictions to do what we did in the first half, keep playing, as Chris said, keep the ball moving, don't treat it like a hot potato, the game could have been very, very different. So, it's a big, and it's a very harsh lesson for us. The scoreline looks very, very harsh, but that's the reality at this level, Gavin. I was chatting to a friend after the match, and I said that, that what we got away with in League One, you are absolutely not going to get away with in this division, because teams are more ruthless, managers are more savvy. There's the quality is so greater in this division. Certainly from Burnley, that you are going to be punished, and we've got to get smart to that, Gav. There's nothing wrong with these. As long as we can use this as a lesson and learn from it and make sure we don't repeat the same mistakes, long run it might be good for the players' development, and that's what I'm hoping it'll be.
Chris, your thoughts?
Gav, you must have replayed that 20 times when Phil was talking there. Will you turn it off? Will you?
It's cruel and unusual punishment.
Do you know why I pulled it back though? Just because I'm trying to look for signs of what went wrong, and something that I didn't pick up on at the time is Dan Neil, just as he loses the ball, look where he is.
He's dropping back casually, isn't he?
Yeah.
It's
just mentally we'd gone.
Absolutely.
Actually, well, the worst thing about that, if you rewind it back, his reaction when the goal goes in, his first reaction is to turn around and look at everyone else.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, look, like I said, that fourth goal was just a symptom of what was going on then, and that we just weren't keeping the ball, and because in the first half, Neil would have just pointed back to the centre halves and just told Bart, just pass it back there. Let's keep possession. Don't give it away. We don't need to. We're not in any rush. Don't worry. Just play the ball back. But because we were trying to get back into the game, we got a bit desperate, and heads had gone. We just, Dan Neil asked for the ball in a crap position where Burnley were on him, and his first touch kind of let him down. But what I will say, generally in the game, yes, Burnley kind of pinned us in and put us in under all that sort of pressure, but it wasn't like, looking again, we saw the game, but looking at the stats, Burnley didn't pepper our goal with shots. They didn't go through on goal, 5 times and should have had goal after goal. They scored 4 goals. They had 4 shots on target. They had 9 shots. We had 10 shots, and we had 5 shots on target. So it's not like Burnley kind of were going clean through and should have scored 6, 7, 8 goals. They had 4 shots on target. They scored 4 goals, and actually, 2 of those were absolutely kind of fantastic goals, weren't they? Burnley didn't kind of wipe the floor with us. It wasn't like we we put ourselves under pressure. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I think it was about us. I don't that yes, Burnley tweaked things, but I think it was things we didn't do that we were doing right in the first half. And I mean, we were our own worst enemy.
Without a doubt.
Well, have we depressed ourselves enough? Yeah,
I think so. It's been cathartic in a way.
Yeah, we had to talk about it. Look, we don't just turn up when Sunderland are playing well and talk about all the great things. We have to talk about the crap stuff. Feels like a while since we've had to talk about a capitulation like this, but it's just one of those things. We've got to go again. It's important how we respond, isn't it, Phil? It's like, people will point to the form of the team at the minute. I think we've won 1 in 8.
Yeah.
So, that doesn't sound great, does it? And there's no sugarcoating it. But you have to say that in that spell, and for most of this season, we've been missing some big players. And I'm looking at the fixtures now, and we've got 4 games till the World Cup.
Yeah.
And we've just got to try and get through this run.
3 of them are away.
Try and get through. 3 of them are away from home. So, that might be a bad thing, actually, because I didn't really talk about it, but I don't know. I didn't really like some of the... I'm not going to dig our own fans out too much, but, people streaming out the ground when the 4th went in, booing. I don't like booing. When it's warranted, I get it. Totally get it. Boo teams off who've got no heart, no desire, no passion for the club, who don't try. Then, boo it.
Yeah.
But this wasn't one of them occasions. And
I think it's important to say here, Gav, in my opinion, that if you compare the sense of unity and team spirit that this team has got to the sense, or the lack of that, when we were last in the Championship in 2017-18, I think it's night and day, personally. And I don't think there's an attitude problem with this team. I really, really don't. Back then we had a team of wasters, mercenaries, driftwood, who half of them didn't want to be there and the other half were phoning it in when they were playing. I don't think it's not like that now. I don't think anybody could disagree with that. So I don't think there's a problem with the attitude of the team. I don't think there's a problem with the application of the team. I do think we let our heads go down a little bit too easily, which I think is understandable given the onslaught that we faced from Burnley in that second half. But I certainly don't think there was a lack of effort there, Gav. I think that towards the end, I think we had nothing left to give. The tank was empty. And in the end, you could see by some of the body language as Burnley's 4th goal went in, shoulders were slumped, heads were down, arms were up in disbelief. So I think that's a natural reaction in that situation. But I don't think there's an attitude problem, Gav, or an application problem. I really, really don't. I think it was a bad day at the office, as you said. The form's not great. Just looking at the upcoming games, we've obviously got Luton, Huddersfield, Cardiff, and then Birmingham in the next 4. I think they're winnable. I think Luton will be the trickiest challenge of them all, without a doubt. Kenilworth Road's a tough place to go. But they've just got to bounce back, Gavin. This is the first time this season, I think, that the players are going to be under real pressure ahead of a game. I think we're going to really find out what they've got and what Mowbray has got as well, because we've praised him for being this kind of fatherly figure, haven't we, to the players, and the kind of guy who'll put an arm around the shoulder when necessary and nurture the young lads if they need it. But I think there'll be a bit of tough love this week, and I think that's probably justified, but they've just got to move on from it, Gav. That's all they can do. It's happened. It was a bad day at the office. It was a bad result, but we've just got to try and move on from it now.
Just very quickly, though, one thing Mowbray shouldn't do, though, is lose, in terms of the players and what they get out of the game, is lose what was so good about the first half.
Absolutely. Yeah,
because
absolutely.
that was us at our absolute best. And we shouldn't forget how good we were in that first half, moving forward in terms of an example of how we do things. So I just hope he doesn't, it's not so much, yes, we have to kind of get rid of whatever happened, whatever went wrong in that second half, we have to sort that out. But let's get back to that first half performance and make sure that's our standard and we keep it for 90 minutes.
Yeah, like I said, Luton next, they've done pretty well recently. You're just looking at the fixtures here. They beat Norwich, beat QPR recently, drew away at West Brom, scored 3 against Huddersfield, beat Hull away, beat Blackburn, who of course beat us. So they're no mugs. They were in the playoffs last year. As you said, Phil, at Kenilworth Road, they're a good team. And that's probably going to be the toughest set. How do you see us bouncing back from this, though, Chris? What do you see happening? Because it's going to be this is sort when you look at the games we've lost this season, this is probably going to be the hardest one to rebound from.
Well, I mean, look, like I said a minute ago, we've got to hold on to how good we were in that first half. for the players. And we have to focus on the specific things that went wrong. And Mowbray will look to see what happened at half time. I mean, only they will know what happened in the dressing room at half time. Now, if they were given instructions that they couldn't go out there and kind of implement properly, then if that's behind it, then they can sort that out and say, right, well, we can target exactly what went wrong and deal with that issue. But let's it's saying bounce back. It's not bouncing back from a truly kind of awful 90 minutes that we've just had an absolute disaster. It's recovering from whatever went wrong and pinpointing exactly what that was, but saying, look, we were better than Burnley. I mean, there was only one team in it that first 45 minutes. We should kind of play on that and focus on that and say, well, that is our standard. That's how we play. And just going on to Luton Town at Kenilworth Road, yes, it has been a fortress, but their home form isn't that great this season. They've only won 2 out of their 8 games, and they've drawn half of them at home this season. I mean, they've got, actually looking at it, they've got exactly the same record as us at home this season, and you wouldn't say our home form has been spectacular this season. I think that's kind of, people are going on about our home form, actually saying it's a bit of a concern. Our away form's decent, we've won almost half the games away from home this season, and we go at teams the way we play. So I think we could go at them and get a result at Luton.
Why not? Let's end on that nice, happy, optimistic note. Yeah. Cheers, Phil. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Thanks, Gav.
Cheers, Chris. As always, you'll be back with a preview, I imagine.
Yeah, thanks for replaying that 4th goal 20 times. Cheers, Gav. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, thankfully this is an audio podcast, so the listeners didn't have to live through that. But yeah, cheers everyone for listening. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back, like we say, with a preview. ROKERRAPPORT.sbnation.com for all your content as the week progresses. And yeah, we'll catch you next time. See you later.